We were supposed to be looking for the missing girl. Her name was Quincy, 14 years old. She wandered away from the campsite to try and find a phone signal and never came back. It was 2 days before they called for volunteers. Now, I didn't know her and I didn't know her parents, but I showed up anyways. Around here, that's what you do when a kid goes missing. You help. They assigned me to a grid section past the old fire break. I was paired with a buddy of mine, Joel, a retired firefighter with a permanent squint and a voice that sounded like it came through gravel. And there was Owen, this kid I didn't really know, early 20s, quiet, but polite. The search was slow, just woods, quiet and unremarked at first. But after a while, the sound started feeling heavy. There weren't any birds, nor bugs even, just the sound of our boots cracking old twigs, nothing else. That's when we found this grove. At first, I thought the trees were just unusually pale birch, tall, thin tusks, but when we got closer, I stopped walking. Something about them just didn't feel right. It wasn't like any bark I'd seen before. It wasn't rough at all. Actually, it was incredibly smooth. Joel stepped forward and placed a hand on one of the trunks, and a second later, he recoiled and stared at his palm like he'd touching a hot stove. It moved. It moved, he said. I stepped closer and reached out myself. When my fingers touched the surface, the tree gave just slightly, like there was something inside of it that rose and fell with rhythm. Slow pulsing. Breathing. I backed away instantly, and Joel said nothing after that. He just pulled out a strip of red tape and marked the trunk while I radioed in. They told us to continue on. They said they'd send someone to check later. We kept walking, but I didn't think any of us were really searching after that. That was unreal, not natural, but there wasn't a moment more we wanted to stay there. That night, Joel sent me a photo he'd taken earlier, a close-up of the base of one of the pale trunks. I had to look at it for a long time before I understood what I was seeing. There were toes, human toes, bent and distorted, nearly grown over the trunk itself, but still unmistakable. 5 of them, curled and fused into the bark like they'd been molded from the inside. We both froze, unable to comprehend if that could even be real. I hardly slept that night. There was this pressure in my chest, a sheer panic I couldn't rid of. The next morning, they shut down our search grid entirely. Forensics came in with biohazard suits. They didn't tell us much, but I managed to speak with one of the lab techs later. He was standing behind the trailer, smoking a cigarette, with both hands shaking. "It's human," he said. "The tree, or what you thought was a tree." He smirked and flicked the cigarette. "Made of a couple compact bones. The bark is skin. Real skin. Even had marrow inside." I couldn't speak. My mind was running circles, adrenaline crashing with the panic in the way that made nothing make sense. He nodded. "We got the DNA results," he added quietly. "Quincy, and 3 other missing persons. I'm going back years." That was all I needed to hear. Joel and I left the staging site that afternoon. No one came with us. I honestly don't remember when he rejoined us, or whenever he left. He was just there, walking behind us, or made our way back to the village. We didn't speak. It was that specific kind of silence, one that no one wanted to break. Just walking, and just needing a drink, something to reset reality. About a half an hour into the walk, we saw another tree. It was standing alone in a clearing, pale and still looking wet, like it hadn't finished drying yet. The surface shimmered lightly in the light, and I reached out and touched it before I could stop myself. It was warm. Not sun warm, it was body warm. There were strips of tissue hanging from the upper branches, swaying gently like red leaves. At the base of the trunk, half buried in soil and flesh, the torn shoulder patch. "Police issue?" Joel muttered, stepping closer. Then I heard something. It was a whisper. Very close. Close enough to make me turn around even though I didn't want to. I turned, and he was gone. Or rather, he wasn't there anymore. In his place was something bent, long, limber. Crouched low on all fours, its spine arched unnaturally. Its legs were twisted, bent backwards like a broken animal. Its jaw was split and curled open towards the top of its head, revealing a grin it didn't belong on anything human. Eyes were pit of red light, wide and motionless. Joel didn't scream. His body just rose, like something had gripped him invisibly and pulled him upward. His ribs bent outwards, one by one, tearing through his skin. His spine snapped with the sound of dying twigs. Flesh peeled back in silent strips. Every movement was methodical, precise. Bones twisted out and curled forward. Muscles and tendons folded into the shape of roots. His body reshaped itself into something tall, white, and still. He wasn't dying. He was becoming. I turned and I ran. I ran straight back to the village. I didn't stop to look back. I didn't stop to listen. By the time I reached the first house on the outskirts, my legs were numb. My chest was burning and I collapsed into somebody's yard. I don't know who helped me or how I got inside that night. I dreamt, at least I think it was. I felt my body being dragged against something cold. My limbs wouldn't respond. I was fully awake, completely paralyzed. I couldn't even open my mouth. I couldn't scream, but I felt everything. The pain came slowly, not sharp. It was deep and spreading, like something pulling apart the pieces of me from the inside. My legs twisted inwards, my spine curled, my chest began to open. I remember the sound of each bone's cracking, one by one. I remember the warmth of the ground swallowing my back, and the pressure of roots slipping over my skin like fingers. And then I woke up. I was on the floor next to the bed, drenched in sweat. My arms ached. My ribs felt sore, like I'd been curled into myself for hours. It was the most vivid dream I've ever had. One I knew would haunt me for the rest of my life. Joel, I whispered to no one. I told myself it was stress and night terror, my brain trying to make sense of what I'd just seen. Kenneth, the old man who owned this house, came up to check on me. Said he'd heard me shouting. I guess he wasn't the only one who helped me in. I didn't know him well, but at that point any face felt like a lifeline. I asked if I could call the police. I needed to know what happened to Joel. They said they found more trees, and yes, one of them matched his DNA. Then I asked about Owen. There was a pause on the line, and the voice asked me to repeat the name. I did. The quiet kid. The third one assigned to our group. Another pause.
We didn't send you out in threes. You were paired with Joel. All teams were in pairs.
He asked if I was feeling okay, that I'd been reported missing, that Joel was last seen with me, asked if I could tell them where I was. I was confused. How long was I out? I hung up. I walked downstairs slowly, my knees shaky, one step at a time, barely able to walk, like my limbs were limp, like I couldn't fully control them. My mind was racing, my stomach felt hollow. And I saw it. Kenneth was floating in the middle of the living room, his limbs twitching, bending. Bones cracked, flesh tore open. He collapsed backwards onto the floorboards as if something burrowed through him, reshaping him from the inside out. He didn't scream. He just wept quietly. Then he whispered something. And then something whispered right behind me. I turned. The thing. It was black. Tall. Long-jawed. Covered in pale fur. Its eyes were deep, hollow, and red, fixated on me. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I can only feel the pain spreading again. Deep, familiar pain. Like my limbs were being torn and rearranged. My chest tightened. My spine curled. I saw blur through the tears, and all I could do was watch my life come to an end. And I saw it, shrieking. It was morphing. It was changing. Its eyes were now human, on a human face, attached to a human shape. A shape I now recognize inside of my mirror. It was my own shape.